My name is Calvin, or just Cal, Sanders. I'm 33 years old, and I work for one of my best friends. Her name is Tony Lapiro, and she is the same age. We went to college together. She studied business management with a minor in design, and I studied design with a minor in accounting. You see, we had a dream. We wanted to finish college together and then work on building our own boutique business, specializing in graphic design for small businesses. It took years of hard work for other companies to establish ourselves, but 5 years ago we did it. Although I am not a part owner of the company, I am emotionally very involved in making our company, Zapiro, sound better than Lapiro, successful. Tony is the owner and lead sales professional. She finds contacts, makes presentations, and I do the basic design. This could be just a sign for a business, or it could be part of an advertising campaign. We're coping. The small business community is huge and desperately needs our help. When I was working at a large company doing routine work, I started dating Constance, or Connie, Reynolds. She was and remains a very attractive woman, 3 years younger than Tony and me. Connie was a model at the agency where I worked, and we exchanged ideas during photo shoots before we started dating and then getting married. I consider myself incredibly lucky to have won over Connie, and she says the same about me, especially at parties. I feel like she's way above my level, but well, I just smile and take it as it comes. Of course, we both had experience in the intimate sphere before meeting each other. Connie was a model in college. Surprisingly, her specialty was also graphic design. Since she was 2 years younger and studied at a different university, we didn't meet until after college. She was also active in the sorority and admitted to me when we were dating that she had participated in many parties with fraternal organizations over the years. But that's in the past, and I'll rip your head off if you ever suggest I do something like that again, was her first and last comment on this topic. I didn't care. Connie was uninhibited, to say the least. I was able to benefit from her previous experience. Long story short, Connie agreed to be my wife about a year before Tony and I started working for ourselves. She supported us all this way. Now about Tony, this is a completely different case. She is about 5 feet 8 inches tall and a little curvy. She works out constantly to stay in shape and looks like $1,000,000 every day. Her smile shines on her tan face with blue eyes. The dark hair is cut in a stylish, short, but sexy manner. She can tilt her head slightly, let a strand of hair fall across her forehead, then lift her eyes and simply pierce your soul with her gaze. I know that many contracts have been won because of this insight, especially when our proposals were equal to those of our competitors. Man or woman, it didn't matter. She could charm anyone. Her personal life, however, was not so brilliant. By day, she was a professional to the core, decisive, direct, but tactful when necessary. She ruled our little kingdom. We had known each other for many years, and we had a degree of friendship that the other 8 people in our company did not understand. I'm not saying she wasn't friendly with them. Just the shared experience of studying and starting a business brought us closer together. Are you asking if I tried to start something with her? To be honest, I tried in college. That's how we met. We were both at a party alone, with plenty of alcohol and music. I asked her to dance. We danced, then went for coffee to get away from the noise and quickly hit it off. But things didn't go further than that. There was no spark between us to go any further. Tony often dated different men. Among them were many influential people whom she wanted to get to know better, and they, in turn, wanted to take possession of her little panties. I have no idea how often she got intimate with someone, but I think it was quite often. She could date one man for several months, sometimes even a year, but then for some reason the relationship always ended. Since our group was small, Connie and Tony knew each other and sometimes hosted bachelorette parties. I'm sure Connie told Tony about the things she wanted to change about me, and Tony probably discussed her men in detail. After all, don't all women do this? Connie turned 30, and her modeling contracts no longer came in as often as when she was 18 or even 20. Connie is tall, about 5'10", and graceful, which is ideal for young models, but not so in demand at an older age. In our city, they were more often looking for models with a more maternal body type. We started talking about children because Zapiro was doing well. In fact, Tony has almost given up cold calling. Our reputation began to attract clients on its own. It all started with Tony sometimes sending me out to meet clients without her. These were usually local companies with whom we already had a working relationship. I met with the owner, discussed his or her goals, and made notes and sketches in a notebook. If we found a common language, ideas came quickly, and we immediately decided on the task. Sometimes the client could not clearly articulate his goals, and such meetings became painful. Then it was necessary to schedule additional meetings in order to still come to a solution that would suit both parties. The first time Tony insisted that I go to the meeting alone, saying, "Listen, this client is already ours. I don't have to sell anything, and you're a design guru, and that's exactly what they need right now. You can handle it." At first, I was a little hesitant, as I have never been a good salesman. It was difficult for me to find words when I needed to sell something. But give me a notebook and a pencil, and the ideas will start flowing. These local meetings gradually grew into out-of-town trips. Our small town didn't have a hub for air travel, so sometimes we had to drive up to 150 miles to meet with a client. It's not too far to go back on the same day if the meeting was successful, but it was often necessary to stay overnight when the process was delayed to get everything agreed. When I worked in the office, Tony had a habit of popping in to chat with me or calling me into her office. She loved to share stories about her dates, talking about all the difficulties and joys. But her new novel was completely different. The first time I heard about him was when she said, "I have a date today. I'll leave early to get ready." This is something new. I was surprised. "You never leave early. Who is this guy, and what did he do to my boss?" Her smile was dazzling. "First of all, this is not a guy. I've never been attracted to women before, but this one has me hooked, and I want to see if there's a spark between us." This information amazed me. Tony had never said she was interested in women before. "Who is she? When can I meet her?" I asked, without interfering with personal details. We weren't that close after all. "Perhaps she will tell Connie about this at the next meeting." Tony shook her head. "Not yet. I can't tell who she is because she's married. Like me, she has no real experience with women, but she wants to develop our relationship. Today, we're just going into town to have dinner." Grabbing her purse and case, she added, "You're here as the eldest while I'm getting ready for a date." I simply nodded and went back to work. I had planned to stay late at the office because Connie had mentioned a few days earlier that she was going to meet up with her model friends to complain to each other about how capricious their industry was. I just grinned and asked her to take a taxi or call me if they suddenly got drunk or depressed. I was completely immersed in the project I was working on. Ideas seemed to flow like a river. My fingers could barely keep up with the flow of thoughts. Sometimes inspiration needs to be squeezed out of oneself, but that evening it came on its own, and the work progressed easily. I was so focused that I didn't notice how time flew by. I used a pencil to create shadows and accents on the storyboard to convey to the client what I was envisioning. And so, I finally looked up. It was already 2 in the morning. Crap. I looked at my phone, and there was a missed text from Connie, sent around 1 a.m. She asked where I was. I didn't answer. I just turned off everything in the office and went home. The journey took about 20 minutes. At home, I quietly undressed, climbed into bed, and softly kissed the back of Connie's head, lightly stroking her back so that she knew I was back. I then immediately fell into a deep sleep until my alarm woke me up in the morning. The next day was real torture. I felt completely defeated. I tried to concentrate on the ideas that came to my mind at night, but I couldn't. And then, as if to finish me off, Tony came into my office to tell me about her date. "Cal, it was amazing. We understand each other so well, as if we have known each other all our lives. There was not a single topic that we could not talk about, even if our views differed. And she is so beautiful. We met at a local bar, the one that mostly women go to. I guess you could call it a gay bar, but there were so many women there with wedding or engagement rings. It was my first time there, and I was surprised. I couldn't resist, even though I was too tired to hold back my filters. So, were there any public sex scenes? Did the women go topless or without any clothes at all? And your companion? Was she uncomfortable there? Tony lightly slapped my hand. No, stupid. There was nothing like it. In fact, the atmosphere in the bar is quite calm. There is a small dance floor, but the music is not loud. We could talk freely without having to shout over the noise, unlike most nightclubs. She fell silent, considering my questions. I think she was comfortable. The atmosphere was not oppressive. We had a good chat and got to know each other better. I hope our relationship will move to the next level. She smiled dreamily. She was in a beautiful dress, not too revealing, but emphasizing her figure. I could hardly resist the desire to undress her right there. I nodded, and she continued. When we get to this point, I intend to make love to her for hours on end. She stopped and blushed, realizing what she was saying. Damn, I'm turning myself on. I have to go, she said, hastily leaving my office. I've never seen Tony like this before. Even when discussing her ex-men, she never behaved like this. She seemed to urgently need to deal with this tension. Tony didn't say anything more about her new lover for several days. Meanwhile, Tony and I were going to a meeting with a new client, the owner of a dairy farm. The trip was planned to a small town, about 4 hours away. This was a new client. The owner's wife wanted us to develop a logo for their farm, but the husband himself was not sure whether it was worth spending money on it. We understood that the sale would be difficult, and the contract was unlikely to be large, but we still decided to try our luck. Typically, Tony tried to combine such trips with visits to other potential clients in order to maximize the return on time and costs. This case should have been no exception. The plan was to leave early Wednesday morning, drive to Reynoldsville, stay at a local motel overnight, and meet with the client Thursday morning. If everything went well, we returned back the same day, late in the evening. If work was delayed, we would stay overnight and return on Friday. We agreed on this schedule in advance. However, on Tuesday afternoon, Tony came into my office with a disappointed look on her face. Cal, circumstances have arisen. Can you handle this client alone? It was strange. What's happened? It's a long journey alone, almost 300 miles across the wasteland. I know, but my new girlfriend. God, she needs a name. Since she is married, I will not use her real name. Let's call her Madam X. Anyway, Madam X called and said that her husband was leaving for a conference and she wanted to know if I could come and join her. I agreed, but I hate to put this on you. So instead of driving, the company will pay for a commuter plane ticket that will take you 50 miles out of town, and I'll even rent a car for you. You won't have to leave until Thursday morning, and you'll be able to meet with your client by noon. If all goes well, you'll be able to go home Thursday night and won't have to stay the night. If not, you will return on Friday and spend only 1 night away instead of 2. I think this could work, but don't make it a habit. You know I'm not selling anything. I'm just trying to deliver what you promise your customers. She laughed, and I went home to make love to my wife. Connie was glad that I would only be gone for 1 night. If you're lucky enough to sell that farmer your ideas and get home on Thursday night, you might be lucky then, she said after our long and passionate lovemaking. I fell asleep with a smile on my face. Wednesday was a good working day. When I got home, Connie was cooking dinner, wearing only a full apron. I ran after her around the kitchen, trying to grab her breasts, butt, and between her legs. Luckily, dinner wasn't ruined, and we had a great session on the kitchen table before finally having dinner. Thursday was disappointing. The commuter plane hit all the air pockets between the two cities. My stomach hurt from trying not to throw up everything in the cabin. Then I started getting a headache, which almost never happens to me. It wasn't a migraine, but it really interfered with my creativity. The ride to the dairy wasn't bad, but it didn't make up for the terrible flight. Things got even worse on the farm. The farmer, Jim Bell, wouldn't talk to me. He called me a city dandy who doesn't understand anything about the dairy industry. I think I managed to calm him down a little when I agreed with him, but he still didn't want to have a conversation with me. His wife, Nancy, apologized and suggested that the two of them discuss ideas. She imagined all of their employees wearing t-shirts with a single logo that would look good on trucks, tractors, loaders, feed machines, and a self-propelled manure spreader. By the time my headache finally began to subside, I was able to draw a little while we talked. No, I was not infatuated with the farmer's wife. Anyway, Nancy cooked us a delicious lunch, and I left my sketches on the table as we all sat down to eat. Jim was still a little annoyed by my presence, but he was a good host and refused to argue during the meal. And then something happened. He looked at my notebook and suddenly froze. He looked at one of the drawings for a long time and then began to smile. I didn't know why he was so interested, and I didn't want to ruin the moment by asking. Finally, he took my notepad. "Where did you get this drawing?" He pointed to the head of a cow that I had drawn. It was a slightly caricatured, but still recognizable image of a dairy cow. I shrugged. "I don't know. Nancy and I were talking about ideas, and I just started drawing it. Why do you ask?" "She looks a lot like the cow I had as a child. That old cow was what started our dairy farm. She died a long time ago, but I still miss her. She was almost like a pet. She gave the sweetest things, milk, and had excellent offspring." Nancy nodded. "Flossie was a great cow, and she really was the beginning of our herd. Some of her descendants still give us milk, just like her." This was the start of a real conversation. I suggested making Flossie the centerpiece of any logo. We discussed ideas, maybe depict her with a chewing motion or with a head of wheat in her teeth. We were getting closer to an agreement when we noticed that the sun was already starting to set. Jim suggested that I go to the motel and come back in the morning to finalize the concept. I was full of ideas and enthusiasm, but realized that we all needed a break. Jim also said that he needed to go to the milking parlor to check on how the evening milking was going. With that, I headed into town and checked into a motel. After dinner, I called Connie and told her I was staying the night. She sounded sad. I asked her if she was planning to meet her friends since I wouldn't be home. "No, Cal, I was preparing for your return. It's been a while, so I thought you'd like a little special surprise. I laid in the bubble bath for a long time after getting everything ready. Looks like I'll have to use my battery husband tonight." Crap. Tomorrow she might no longer be in the mood for such an adventure. I tried to hide my disappointment and assured her that I would rather be home holding her than in this lonely motel. We arranged a short telephone session. I told her that we should start using video calling on our phones if we were going to have remote sex often. She giggled and agreed, then said goodbye, tired from the session and ready for bed. It seems the phone session and a good night's sleep did the trick because I woke up with lots of ideas on how to incorporate Flossie into the farmhouse design. After a good breakfast, I headed back to the farm with my suggestions. Their Jim and Nancy warmly accepted my ideas. We agreed to start small, order t-shirts with the final design. Then we will order vinyl stickers for the company. Jim also suggested that the logo would help deter car thieves. The keys were always left in the vehicles so that anyone could use them if necessary. But there was a risk that the thief would steal the car without any problems. The presence of a logo on the equipment could deter potential thieves. We finished work by noon, and I booked an afternoon commuter flight on the way back to the airport. After returning my rental car, I found myself at the airport, just a few steps from the terminal entrance. Screening went quickly, and I was on my way home. This time the air was calm, and there was almost no turbulence. Luckily, my stomach was no longer hurting by the time I returned home. Friday's lovemaking wasn't as adventurous as it could have been on Thursday, but it was still enjoyable. On Saturday evening, Connie gave me a wonderful session, and on Sunday we gardened together, pulling weeds out of the flower beds, and in the evening we just cuddled, getting ready for a new day at work. On Monday, I stopped by Tony's office when she arrived and told her how the trip had gone. She was pleased that the money for the trip had not been wasted, but said it would take a long time for the investment to pay off. I agreed. The client was satisfied, but given their remote location, the benefit was minimal, although sometimes it's inevitable. After we discussed the trip and plans for the coming week, I asked Tony how her evening with Madam X went. She was literally beaming. It was even better than I could have imagined. We ordered dinner delivered because she didn't know if her husband would call in the evening. He seems to call sometimes, and sometimes not on trips like this. You'd think that he himself is having fun somewhere on the side, isn't it? Yes, maybe. I always call Connie when I'm out, and we have a nice chat before I go to bed. That's very good. I'm glad to hear that. Anyway, he never called, and we ended up sitting on the couch listening to light music. I was fascinated. In all the years of our acquaintance, Tony had never told the details of her relationship, but here she opened up, talking about her first experience with a woman. We kept dancing and ended up kissing. I told her that I'd never been attracted to women before, but over the years we'd known each other, I'd increasingly fantasized about her kindness, her manners, her sophistication, and her amazing body. She admitted that she'd experimented with roommates my senior year of college, but also thought about me more and more in recent years. I wanted to stay the whole weekend, but her husband was due back on Saturday morning, and we couldn't spend another night together. Hopefully soon, let's do it again. She seemed very worried, so I decided to leave her office to give her time to calm down or somehow deal with her feelings. I was happy for her, but felt sad about her lover. Madam X's husband knew nothing, and his wife was having an affair. I didn't see this ending well. Well, anyway, work was waiting. It was necessary to finalize new projects. I sent my ideas for the dairy farm to the entire team, and soon we had layouts ready to edit. Thanks to the internet, I was able to send the sketches to the Bellas so they could choose their favorite. Jim was so impressed that he asked for a cotton plaid button-down shirt with the logo embroidered on the right chest above the pocket to be ordered and sent to him. We had a young intern, and I assigned her to handle this order, giving her the hint to look at a nearby farm supply store that also sold clothing. Of course, being a city dweller since birth, she had no idea that such shirts existed except in old westerns. That week, Tony and I met with several potential clients in our city. Everything went well, and I managed to make a few sketches during the conversation, so we were given the green light to finalize the design. On Friday, Tony and Connie arranged for a couple's night out together. Instead of asking Madam X, Tony agreed to go on a date with a guy named Ted. We went to a restaurant and then danced. It was a pleasant evening. Several times I had to bite my tongue so as not to ask Tony about Madam X in the presence of Ted and Connie. A couple of times Ted and I stayed at the table while Tony took Connie out to dance. In our small town, it was not unusual for women to dance together, so it did not attract attention. They seemed to be chatting happily as they danced, then went off to the ladies' room together after finishing their next set. Since women always need to go to the bathroom in company, I was hoping that Tony would tell Connie something about Madam X, and then Connie would tell it to me. I was still wondering about the role of Madam X's husband in this relationship. Did he know? Did he agree? Did he ever plan to participate? Even with my little experience, I knew that three-party sex could be very exciting if all parties were in agreement. But if Madam X was deceiving her husband, I didn't see how it would end well when the truth came out. When the women returned to the table with Ted and me, I noticed that Connie looked a little nervous. Tony also seemed a little flushed. I gave Connie a questioning look, and she simply mouthed, "Later." I refrained from commenting. After that, Ted and I took the girls back out onto the dance floor for another set. The men obviously weren't the type to discuss the latest sports news on the dance floor, so we just enjoyed the moment. As we said our goodbyes and headed home, I finally asked, "Did Tony say anything about her new love, Madam X?" Connie nodded. I think a couple of cocktails helped her relax a little. She really wanted to spend the evening with Madam X, but apparently she couldn't find a way to get rid of her husband. Ted suspects nothing and thinks Tony wants to go to bed with him, but he's just a cover. I noticed the phrase, getting rid of my husband, and continued. So Madam X's husband doesn't even know what's going on. Do you think if he finds out, will he be able to survive it, or will it all end in disaster? I don't know for sure. According to Tony, he's kind of a gentle person, so I don't think he'll be physically aggressive with either of them. So Tony knows her husband. Why does she risk playing with fire like that? Oh, honey, she thinks she's in love. She even talked her into not wearing a necklace with her so that nothing would get in the way. You know, I'm not into women, but when she started talking about it, I got horny. So maybe Ted will get lucky after all, like a casual one-night stand. Connie almost choked with laughter. In the darkness of the car, I couldn't see her face, but I noticed how her lips pressed into a line and she shook her head. Finally, she answered, "No, I don't think so. She doesn't want men and hairy legs. She wants soft skin, firm breasts, and—" Connie hesitated for a moment, clearly embarrassed to finish. "Well, you get it. She's not interested in men." Connie went silent, and I thought, so Tony is no longer interested in sex with men. She fell in love with Madam X and does not want to cheat on her, no matter what happens. Connie spent the rest of the ride home hinting at how she'd like to take advantage of all the good vibes from the evening to satisfy her own desires. We had a great night. Saturday morning, Connie went grocery shopping, which took her several hours. Perhaps a little more than usual, but I didn't notice it as I was completely absorbed in developing a concept for one of our clients. It was an advertising campaign, and such projects rarely happen in our country, so everything had to be perfect. Suddenly, it dawned on me. Connie mentioned that Tony knew her husband. I remembered Tony hinting that she had known Madam X for a long time, and her feelings had only grown stronger during this time. Of course, she probably also knew Madam X's husband. But who is he? Tony and I don't know everyone, but we have a lot of mutual friends. The first thing I needed to do was find out Madam X's true identity. This was the starting point. I started drawing something on paper with a pencil. What did I really know about Madam X? I didn't know her height or weight, but I remembered Tony describing her bare neck in detail. Did she say something about a long neck? Or did Connie say that? I assumed Madam X was in good shape and perhaps taller than Tony. This is not always the case, but it fits the image in my head. Did Tony say anything about hair color? I couldn't remember. Since I was sketching the drawing, I depicted an oval face without details. Tony mentioned that Madam X wore her hair down on their first date, so I drew long hair. The neck was bare, just as Tony had described. And long, as Connie added. I left it at that and began to mentally make a list of women who fit the general description. I mainly excluded those who did not fit the body type. Jennifer White came to mind. She was taller than average, but she still had extra pounds from her pregnancy last year. Her neck didn't match the look I had in mind, but perhaps it might have been tempting to Tony. Jennifer topped the list of suspects. I wondered if I had ever noticed signs of affection between them. It seems not. But the relationship may have grown from friendship to romance over the past few weeks. I felt sorry for Jennifer's husband and child if she was Madam X. A few more names were added to the list, but it remained short. I needed new data. When Connie returned from shopping, I helped put the groceries away, and we talked while we worked. Honey, was Tony describing Madam X's husband? Are they still having sex, or will it now be considered cheating on Tony? Connie thought about it. No, she didn't give a name or description. When it comes to sex, it seems that Madam X no longer allows her husband any liberties. I think she no longer wants a hairy, muscular body, but prefers something soft and cozy. She looked at me. Why do you need to know this? Are you investigating Tony? Are you jealous of her new lover? No, I'm not jealous. I'm worried that Tony is attracted to a married man, no matter what gender. I don't see anything good in this. I wish Madam X would be honest with her husband if she doesn't love him anymore. Let him get divorced before it gets too confusing. Connie clearly wanted to protect Tony, but she refrained. You know, we shouldn't quarrel over this. This is Tony's life. and she has the right to make mistakes. Why don't you come here and remind me why I'm proud to have you as my husband? I came, and we reminded each other how much we love each other. Our lunch was late, almost dinner, but we were pleased. On Monday, Tony came to my office. We discussed the needs of current clients and potential clients who contacted us. We have agreed on the terms of work with new clients. The week promised to be busy. Having finished this, Tony suddenly said that she had a meeting with Madam X on Saturday. Didn't you take Ted home on Friday and spend time with him? You guys seem to be having a good time together. No, I wouldn't cheat on Madam X. It would be wrong. I will have to suffer until I can be with her again. I hope this happens soon. I couldn't resist. What about her husband? Tony frowned. What about her husband? Well, does she have sex with him? Are you the only one who suffers from lack of love? No, she says that she broke off an intimate relationship with him and is saving herself for me. Why doesn't she leave him and get a divorce? Wouldn't it end badly if she didn't break things off with him? Tony thought for a moment, then said quietly, I asked the same question. She's not ready to leave yet. They have been together for many years, and she still feels something for him. I hope your feelings for me will become stronger. That's quite a cruel statement, old friend. What if she does the same to you one day? I think that will be the bridge I cross when I get to it. Now we only have rare moments together. Perhaps one day we will have more time. So you just had lunch together on Saturday or something. She smiled that same sly smile that I described earlier. When she raised her head, her gaze was so intense that it was almost mesmerizing. Did you know that women can completely satisfy each other without taking off all their clothes? She giggled. We didn't even exchange a kiss. If a man made love to me and didn't even kiss me, I'd be furious. I tried to return to talking about my husband. Tony, you said that you knew Madam X and her husband for a long time. Are you friends with him? She shuddered slightly, as if coming out of her thoughts. What? I asked, are you friends with her husband? Certainly. I've known him all my life. He is a kind and good person. Then how can you do this to him? Won't he be devastated when he finds out? Do you really think you can hide this affair forever? She lowered her head and stared at the table. I continued to press. Do you really think you'll remain friends when he finds out? Won't he hate you for ruining their marriage? Please make sure she ends either your affair or her marriage while you still have some respect for each other. If she chooses you, she can tell him that their marriage is dead, and you two can start a relationship without causing him so much pain. He may even believe that you got back together after the breakup and did not cause it. She answered so quietly that I had to lean closer to hear. I don't know if I'm strong enough to leave her even for a short time. I want her. I crave her. I need her. Cal, can you understand this? I nodded but continued. Yes, I understand. If I cheated on Connie, it would be hard for me to leave too. But think about what you're doing to her husband. What kind of girlfriend does this to him? Do you think he'll just shrug his shoulders and say that the best one won? He is a kind and good person. He's so forgiving. I know that he will still be or rather our friend, if she chooses me. I couldn't believe she was so delusional. This man, this poor anonymous man, will suffer. He will lose his wife, the love of his life, and his friend at the same time. In addition, divisions into sides will begin among their friends. How many more relationships, both casual and deep, will be ruined by this? I had to end the conversation before I said something that might alienate my friend, who is also my boss. Look, Tony, I'm sorry, but I need to get back to these projects, otherwise our clients will be unhappy. I deliberately glanced at my watch to emphasize my point. Tony looked a little upset at how quickly I ended the call, but she nodded and went back to her office. I was stumped. The to-do list was not inspiring. It was just a bunch of names and notes, and nothing stood out. I doodled idly on my notebook until I decided to go for an early lunch. Why am I so concerned about Tony's personal life? I've never been so involved in her affairs before. I have never been so involved or concerned about her past love life before. I knew that she sometimes had several extramarital affairs, but they all ended before serious consequences occurred. The don't ask, don't tell policy worked for her. But this affair seemed deeper, more meaningful, and I was sure that Madam X's husband would find out about it, and then real chaos would begin. I walked around the local park for over an hour, trying to take my mind off Tony's business and focus on work. After buying a hot dog from a street vendor, I sat on a bench until I felt calm enough to return to the office. My notebook with drawings turned out to be useful ideas began to come one after another. Suddenly, inspiration for one company flowed into an idea for another client, and soon I was sketching out several story plans. I was glad that my apathy had passed. Later that day, Connie called me and told me that she was going to meet some model friends. They decided to team up and develop a joint strategy to approach their agent with demands for better working conditions. I doubted it would lead to significant results, but she wanted to try, and it was important to me that she felt supported. That evening, while Connie was busy, I ordered dinner and continued working on the story plans until the inspiration faded. I didn't even notice how the rest of the employees left the office. Tony, when she left, didn't come to see me either. Around 10 o'clock in the evening, I finished work and went home. This time, I arrived before Connie. After taking a shower to wash away the stress of the day, I relaxed on the bed in short pajama shorts with a book in my hands. Connie returned around 11:30. She looked beautiful as always, but this time she was especially radiant. Her hair was neatly styled, and her neck was left open, without any adornment. It was a little strange since she usually wore some kind of necklace. She leaned over and kissed me before letting her hair down. "How long have you been home, dear? Sorry for being late." We debated for a long time about how best to formulate our requirements, but it seems that we have come to a common agreement. As I answered her, I caught a slight scent mixed with her perfume. The smell seemed familiar, but I couldn't identify it. Perhaps it was the scent of one of her friends that was accidentally passed on. This has happened before. Connie quickly showered, put on her nightgown, and snuggled down next to me. We chatted a little about our day, hugging, but without a hint of intimacy. I couldn't help but think about Madam X's husband. He probably isn't hugging his wife right now. The next day, I focused on customer needs and completed many tasks. Tony and I had a staff meeting where we compared notes. As a result, we had a clear plan of action for most of our clients, and employees began scheduling appointments. Tony didn't reveal anything new about her personal life, and I decided not to press her. I was getting ready to go back to work when she suddenly proposed. "Cal, you and I have been friends for ages. In addition, we have a wonderful working relationship. You always go above and beyond your responsibilities to ensure Zapiro thrives. I want to reward you for your loyalty. How about a bonus this year? 10% of the company. Instead of just getting paid, you'll share in the profits and have more say in what we do." I was stunned. Tony had never considered the idea of a partnership before, even during the difficult times when we were just starting out, and she was worried about how to make payroll. To be honest, I'm shocked. It's nice to hear such a proposal. I need some time to process this and discuss it with Connie. We will also have to draw up a contract. Later, Tony came up to me again. "Cal, do you have plans with Connie for Saturday?" I checked the calendar on my phone. "No, it seems like nothing special." "And what?" "I thought Connie might enjoy a spa day. Massage, mud baths, manicure, pedicure, the complete package." "Good idea. She will definitely like it. She is a little stressed because of work." "Great, I'll organize everything." That night, I discussed the partnership proposal with Connie. She was delighted. "This will strengthen our future. Now you and I will be connected forever." I shared her enthusiasm and called Tony to tell her that work on the contract could begin. Connie and I made time for regular acts of intimacy several times a week. I always try to shave before these moments, as she doesn't like the irritation of stubble on her face or inner thighs. I don't mind shaving as it eliminates the discomfort that can ruin my mood. Saturday, which was usually a day for housework, was free due to the management company handling maintenance at our condominium. I decided to go for a run and then headed to the driving range to work on my swing a bit. I returned home long before Connie arrived with Tony and was already deep into the book I had been wanting to read for a long time. Connie came into the room, pulled the book out of my hands, and spun around in place. Her face was glowing, and she looked amazing. "How do I look, dear? Am I great?" Tony added cheerfully. "Come on, Cal, tell her how beautiful she is." "You always look gorgeous, darling," I said, smiling, "but today you're especially radiant." Was it special emollients, cucumber rinse, or mud masks that caused this effect? Connie glanced at Tony, laughing. "I think it's all together." The whole day was both invigorating and relaxing at the same time. Tony stayed for dinner, helping prepare a light meal, and then headed to her room. As we were getting ready for bed, Connie came up to me with some hesitation, biting her lip. "I didn't want to show you this in front of Tony, but I did something special today. Hope you like it." My imagination immediately drew a tattoo, but I immediately discarded this thought. It would be extremely inappropriate for her modeling career. Connie dropped her towel, and I noticed some changes in the bikini line. Previously, she usually did hair removal only when it was required for work, for example, for shooting in lingerie or swimsuits. "Well, what do you say?" I smiled. "You are beautiful, as always, but to be honest, it's a surprise. I know how much you hate doing this because of the itching until your hair grows back." I looked at her in bewilderment. "Did you get waxed?" was my weak answer. "No, dear, I had laser hair removal. Hair will never grow again. Now I will always have smooth skin. Tony said you'll definitely like it." "Does Tony know?" "Of course, dear, she paid for it. She persuaded me to do this. Is it really wild?" She leaned over and whispered, "Do you want to know something else?" I was a little taken aback, but nodded. The girl who did the hair removal was clearly not of traditional orientation. She leaned back and laughed at the look on my face. "So what? Did you take up her offer?" I quickly got into the topic. She lightly slapped my arm. "No, stupid, but I really wanted to get home quickly and pounce on you. I couldn't just ask Tony to take me home since she paid for the whole day, but I was horny then and still am. Take off your clothes and make love to me." On Monday, Tony was in my office again. She told her version of going to the spa. According to her, she also paid for a spa visit for Madam X. When I asked why Connie didn't say anything about the mystery woman, Tony explained that she was keeping Madam X away from Connie. "In general, the spa was very open to women who like women," Tony continued, "and the staff turned a blind eye if two or more women became a little more affectionate during the treatment. It was quite dirty, but making love in a mud bath was unusual and exciting. Then I also did laser hair removal like Connie. Madam X did the same when it was her turn. It was a fun day." "How did you lure her out of the house?" I asked. She waved her hand as if it was no big deal. "Cal, I did the same thing I did with Connie. I called her husband and asked if he would mind if I gave her a spa day at my own expense. He agreed faster than if I had said I would pay for his trip to Augusta to play golf. I think he played golf, fished, or played tennis to occupy his time. Maybe he even visited his mistress, how should I know? It was expensive, but so worth it." Just like Connie, she leaned towards me and whispered, "You know what? I also paid for her laser hair removal." She winked at me and left me perplexed. Heck, I never learned anything new about who Madam X was, and Connie apparently hadn't seen her. During that week, Tony brought me the partnership papers. She really wanted me to sign them, but I said I wanted to study them first. Finally, she relented, and we got back to work. Later, when I was looking through the papers, I was confused by several provisions. It turned out that although I received 10% of the total value of the business, my share of the profits was significantly less than 10%. Moreover, I would have no say in the management of the company and certainly would not be able to change my position. I decided to take the documents to my lawyer to get advice. On another day, and in another meeting, after a group meeting in Tony's office, she tried to seduce me again. You know, now that Madam X and I are both smooth below, we can get matching tattoos. I think about her initials hidden in the rose. This will mean my devotion to her, and also that I am ready to keep our secret as long as necessary. If she does the same, she can tell her husband that the tattoo is for his kisses and caresses, and he won't even know it's for me. At the end of our conversation, she again asked if I had signed the partnership agreement. For some reason, I didn't tell her that my lawyer was checking the documents. I simply replied that Connie and I were discussing the proposal. In fact, Connie brought up the contract every night, asking if I had signed it. I said that I was studying all the nuances, but most likely I would sign soon. Early the next week, my lawyer, Jerry Caldwell, called me and asked me to come to his office immediately. It didn't sound good. I asked one of my colleagues to cover my meetings with clients and rushed to him. As I settled into my chair and took a sip of coffee, he got straight to the point. Cal, I'm sorry for not contacting you right away about the contract, but I couldn't believe the terms that Miss Lapiro wrote down. I took the liberty of contacting her lawyer to try to negotiate better terms, but he was adamant. This is what she wants, and there can be no negotiations. He took a deep breath. I recommend either forcing her to make significant changes or abandoning the idea altogether. I felt there was something wrong with the contract, but the legal language was confusing. Please explain to me in detail so that I can understand. What is she trying to do? I could start from the first point and list them in order, but I'm afraid I won't have enough fingers and toes. So let's look at everything in order. You get paid hourly, right? And overtime for working evenings and weekends. I nodded. So, if you sign this agreement, you will instead receive a monthly fixed salary, which, as far as I understand, is less than your current average income before taxes. I contacted your accountant to check your average annual income. As a partner, Miss Lapiro will be able to make you work overtime every day, and you won't get anything extra for it. But I'll get a percentage of the profits, right? It may be more profitable in the long run. He shook his head. As a partner, you will only receive 10% of 1% of any reported annual profits. Besides, you won't be able to check the books. That is, if she reports a profit of $100,000 next year, your share will be only $100. What was your bonus last year? I had two bonus checks after signing major clients. One was for $5,000 and the other was for $8,300. He shook his head again. That's it, and you will no longer receive any bonuses since you become the owner. As a result, your subordinates will be able to earn more than you. There must be some kind of compensation. Tony and I have known each other for many years, and together we have made the company successful. It's hard to believe she's seriously counting on this. I shook my head in bewilderment. And this is just the beginning. There is a clause in the contract that states that you will not be able to sell your share to anyone other than her. This is not uncommon in partnership agreements, but usually in such cases, the partners have first right of purchase at the agreed-upon price. Here the price is fixed and will never change, no matter how much the company's value increases. In other words, if the company continues to grow, your share will decrease, and you will not be able to sell it to anyone except Tony. After 10 years, you will receive the same salary, since it is fixed in the contract, and your share may drop to 1% instead of 10. I didn't even have time to express my indignation before he moved on to the next point. You also won't be able to quit or leave the company. You have a responsibility to maintain your level of performance, or she can sue you for breach of contract. Judging by the documents, the amount of compensation will be equal to all your assets. In other words, if you decide to leave, she will be able to sue you for everything. Cash, real estate, you will be left with nothing. It was beyond comprehension. I couldn't understand why Tony was trying to corner me. Business was booming. I had no desire to leave or become a competitor. I was fully involved in working for the benefit of the company and, of course, Tony. While Lapiro was successful, it raised my reputation as a designer. What could make her try to break me and at the same time force me to stay in the company? It didn't make any sense. Jerry continued. And that's not all. At the very end of the contract, it is stated that your job title will remain the same. If anyone, and I mean anyone, finds out that you are the owner, Tony will be able to invoke the penalty clause and sue you for everything again. And there is also a non-compete clause, which is unlimited and has no geographical restrictions. So, to sum it up, you're saying that I'll work more, earn less, won't get a real share of the profits, and if I quit or complain, I'll lose everything I have and most likely won't be able to find a job somewhere else. He nodded. I think you understand why I do not recommend that you agree to this partnership. I needed to think about all this. My first reaction was to immediately leave the company and get as far away from this situation as possible. But my common sense told me to figure out why she was doing this. I couldn't believe that Tony would be jealous of my salary or bonuses because we always divided them between everyone, and my pay was only slightly larger than that of my colleagues. Jerry poured me more coffee, and we sat down to discuss the possible reasons for this strange contract. He assumed it was just a negotiating tool, and that Tony expected me to negotiate better terms myself. I wasn't so sure, but I had no other ideas. Finally, we came up with a plan. Jerry will prepare a new agreement that will more closely resemble a standard partnership agreement. I'll sign it and Jerry will send it by snail mail to Tony's lawyer. If we do everything right, it will take 2 or 3 days before Tony realizes that I didn't sign the original document. Maybe this will give us a chance to figure out what's going on. Jerry promised to prepare a new contract in a couple of days. I took the day off to catch my breath and went for a walk in the park. I walked for a long time, thinking about everything, and at some point I found myself on a pedestrian and bicycle path that stretched through the entire city. I didn't walk the entire 9 miles, but I went quite far before turning onto regular sidewalks and heading back to the trailhead. At first, I really wanted to talk to Connie, but she was away filming for the day. It was difficult for her to find work, so I decided to wait until she returned to discuss the contract. As I walked, I began to have questions about why Connie was so insistent that I sign the contract. Yes, she was glad that I was offered a partnership, but in recent days, she even seemed annoyed that I did not sign it immediately. I decided not to tell her anything about my doubts. I would just say that I'm going to sign this week. I wasn't sure if I could hide my feelings, but I decided to try and not say anything to Tony or Connie until the situation was clearer. Connie returned home very late and was so exhausted that she fell asleep immediately after the goodnight kiss. For the first time, I was glad that photo shoots were so tiring for models. The next day, I was out of the office meeting with clients, even with those whom I initially did not plan to meet so as not to intersect with Tony. I didn't want her to bring up the contract again. On Thursday, Tony approached me. This time, she did not ask about the agreement, but began to talk about her last date with Madam X. I wasn't in the mood. Sorry, Tony, but this Michaels campaign is wearing me out. I have no inspiration at all, and it's terribly annoying. Let's talk about this later. Tony seemed a little surprised. I was usually cheerful and optimistic, so my abruptness was a surprise to her. She nodded and left me alone for the rest of the day. At home, Connie tried to pressure me again. She told me that I should trust Tony and that she always has our best interests at heart. I had to bite my cheek to keep from flaring up and demanding to be left alone. It was getting so intense that I couldn't get it out of my head. That night, like all week, I could hardly sleep. On Friday morning, Jerry called and said that the new contract was ready. I stopped by his office and we discussed how to deliver it. With a sly smile, he suggested placing a new contract in the same envelope with the original. At first glance, no one will notice the difference. If Tony's lawyer was lazy, he might just file the documents without even checking them. I signed the original contract under the pseudonym IP Freely, and the present document with my real name, notarized with a grin. Everything was sent by mail, and given that it would not be sent until Monday, Tony would not receive the documents until Tuesday. My tension subsided a little, but the questions did not disappear. I still didn't understand what was happening. Returning to the office, I told Tony that I had signed the contract just by briefly looking into her office. I was slightly disappointed. I thought there would be some kind of celebration surrounding the partnership, but the day slowly dragged on. I was the last one left in the office, as usual, and realized that I hadn't done anything worthwhile for clients all week. When I got home, Connie was getting dressed to meet her model friends. She said they were going to discuss how their requests for an agent were going. I wasn't in the mood for fun, so I didn't mind being left alone. Connie returned around midnight in high spirits. Somehow she found out that I signed the contract and wanted to celebrate. We opened a bottle of wine, but fatigue quickly took over. I fell asleep before we could do anything else. The next morning, Connie asked me not to plan anything and, for God's sake, not to bring home work. She wanted my full attention. We quickly got ready and went to a country boarding house and had a good rest. After we got home, Connie said she had an errand to run and would be back in a couple of hours. I was satisfied and, tired, did not argue. She kissed me on the cheek and left. I was tired, maybe even a little exhausted from our whirlwind holiday and a week of lack of sleep, so I decided to take a nap. Later, I barely heard the door open and a quiet conversation was heard. I shook myself awake and went down to the living room where I saw Connie and Tony sitting on the couch. I just stood there as the fog of sleep gradually cleared. Suddenly, it became clear to me who Madam X was. Their postures, the way they were slightly turned towards each other, the glances they exchanged, and the expressions on their faces made everything obvious. I realized that Tony would probably be grinning smugly, thinking she had won, but in fact her gaze at me remained as friendly as ever. Connie looked a little guilty, but not too much. She tried to get up, but winced. I found my voice. "No, I'm sure it hurts a little. Just sit." She started to speak, but I raised my hand to stop her. "You got a tattoo, didn't you? Rose, I guess. Somewhere near your little heart-shaped private area, right? And there are probably stylized initials TL there?" She tried to say something again, but I interrupted her. "No need. I'm not interested. There's nothing you can say that will change anything." I turned to my ex-girlfriend. "You deliberately made sure that I knew about every meeting you had with your mistress. You teased me with this. What kind of friend flaunts an affair with his friend's wife? What do you do with your enemies? You tie them to a chair and have sex right in front of them." Connie found her voice. "I don't want to lose you, but we realize that we can't hide it anymore. I love two people and want us all to be one family." For some reason, Tony started to nod. What the hell is going on here? Once I finally put all the puzzles together, I assumed that I was now supposed to leave with my tail between my legs. I'm the loser, the guy with the big L on his forehead. It's not even worth mentioning the horns here. Tony spoke. "Nothing needs to change except that I want my share of Connie. I suggest finding a larger space with a huge bedroom and the biggest bed you can buy and everyone living together. Connie wants kids, and I think you do too. I want to be an aunt who spoils my nephews and nieces. As long as I can be in the same bed with Connie, I'll be happy." I shook my head in disbelief and looked at Connie. "Is this what you want? Is this your idea of family? Will I be the father of your children while you continue to have sex with your girlfriend? I guess I'll have to sleep in the back room, and you'll only visit me to get me pregnant." One nodded, and the other shook her head. What a contrast. I suddenly felt too tired to talk, argue, or even think. I just turned around and left. I noticed that Connie had parked in her usual spot, and Tony had parked her car behind mine, effectively blocking my exit. Was this done on purpose or by accident? What's the difference now? The main thing is that it worked. I couldn't leave. I had my phone and wallet with me, so I just started walking, or rather, running. One of the women followed me, trying to get me to come back and talk. I didn't look around to figure out who it was. For me now, they were both the same in their betrayal. I needed to escape. You know, in these stories where the man leaves, they often say that he is a coward, but the reality is different. He is wounded like an animal. He cannot think, he cannot understand what is happening. He only feels, and all he feels is pain. Like any wounded animal, it will defend itself if cornered. but its main goal is to find a place where it can hide and heal its wounds. He may need alcohol to help with this, but the main thing is silence and shelter. Even if he goes to a bar, he looks for the darkest and most secluded corner. So I ran and ran and ran. I tripped and fell, but immediately jumped up. I couldn't see or focus on anything other than finding my cave, my hiding place where I could rest and recover. In the end, I fell completely and could not get up again. My physical strength left me. It was already dark, and no one was around to see how vulnerable I had become. I was wounded, as if I had been shot in the chest by a sniper bullet. Some might say that I was alive, but that only applied to my body. My soul was broken. The person I trusted the most, to whom I told all my dreams and fears, betrayed me. She might still have my wedding rings on her finger, but her body now belonged to someone else. I felt sick. Even that soft, smooth triangle of skin now belonged to Tony. Connie only did the laser treatment because Tony wanted it, not because I ever asked for it. I vomited until there was nothing left in my stomach. Dry vomiting began. I cried. I have heard that when the stomach is completely empty, ulcers can appear. And what? I didn't care. I needed to get rid of the taste of betrayal. In my mind, it had become toxic and corrupt. I couldn't stop trying to clear my mouth of this sensation. In the end, I completely lost my strength and must have lost consciousness. It didn't feel like a dream because I didn't feel rested at all when I woke up. There was a taste of bile in my mouth. I was shivering from the cold as I lay on the dew-covered grass without a jacket. My clothes were wet. My eyes couldn't open right away because of the tears I shed. When I rubbed them, they became dry and itchy. Maybe I'll have an allergic reaction and die, choking from a swollen throat. No, I didn't have to count on such luck. Finally, I looked around to see where I was. This was not a cave or Superman's fortress of solitude. I was on the corner of a farmer's field, in an area where the irrigation system was inadequate. Farmers sometimes plant such corners with cover crops, but this area had been left to wild grasses, which had grown about 2 feet tall and were damp with dew. I realized that I was only a mile from my condominium, which was built on the edge of the city. I seemed to have run for miles, but without trying to run in a straight line, I gradually turned left and was almost back where I started. What luck to escape and end up close to home. I wonder what Freud would say to this. A car passed by on the highway that ran along the field, and I crouched down in the tall grass again. I had no idea who it was, but I was sure that the two lovers were now looking for me. Then I finally understood why that enslaving partnership contract was needed. Tony believed she was in control of the situation. If I try to go against her sabotage at work, exposing their relationship, divorcing Connie, public exposure, or anything else, she will destroy me, along with my career. At least that's what she thought. She probably thought she had everything under control. She just didn't take into account that the lawyer had not yet given final consent to the contract. So what now? What's my next step? I felt my wallet and phone in my pocket. The battery was low, so I didn't know how many missed calls and messages I might see. I think with a dead battery, the phone cannot be tracked even by the police. This means that I had no intention of charging it yet. I sat in the grass so that only my head was visible from the road. It was Monday, and the traffic was quite busy with people heading into the city to work. Sitting in the grass did nothing to dry my clothes, so I waited until the morning rush hour was over and then headed to the side of the road. I walked towards the city, walking in the direction of oncoming traffic so that I could turn onto the narrow side of the road in time if a car was approaching. I didn't want to get run over. With my luck, I would have survived, but I was seriously wounded and unable to escape from these two. As I walked, I tried to figure out how to make them pay for their betrayal. Maybe I should take a weapon and shoot. No, it's a fast track to prison. Maybe wait for them at the restaurant and then hit them with the car. Again, no, and again the direct road to prison. I thought about many ways to take revenge in my head, but none of them gave me the opportunity to escape punishment. To complicate matters further, Tony was the one who interacted with the local elite to build a business. I was just a designer and realized that I had virtually no political influence. Should I divorce Connie? I discussed this in my mind. If I file for divorce, I will have to pay all legal fees, both mine and hers. This is a common complaint I've heard from friends whose marriages have ended. The one who files for divorce pays for everything. Some of my friends, both men and women, were financially and emotionally crushed when their spouses stubbornly resisted divorce. No, why give her what she wants? Then she will receive most of our assets and will be free to marry Tony. This is exactly what Tony wanted. Why else was she pursuing my wife if not to take her away from me? Lost in thought, I almost didn't hear the wheels squeaking on the road. A large pickup truck drove by, and I barely had time to step aside to avoid getting hit by the mirror. Only a loud signal made me raise my head in time and retreat, almost falling into the ditch. I needed to keep my head in order to avoid making such mistakes. That mile of walking back to the condo went by too quickly, and I didn't have enough time to make any final decisions. As I approached the corner of a house on the street next to our former home, I stopped and cautiously peered around the corner. Luckily, I only saw my car parked in front of our house, which now seemed empty and cold. Now it was necessary to decide how to act. I wanted to pick up my clothes and my toiletries. Okay, maybe I'll leave the razor now. There was no need to maintain my clean-shaven appearance. Maybe a beard would suit me. I chuckled at the thought of the sideburns on my narrow face. Hey, maybe I still have a sense of humor left. Avoiding the sidewalk, I quickly walked straight along the front facades of the townhouses to my car. I quickly opened it, started it, and moved it to a place where it couldn't be blocked. I then returned to the house to collect my personal belongings. Luckily, no one was home. There was a note on the table, but I ignored it. Instead, I took my duffel bags rather than my suitcase. Bags are easier to maneuver if you suddenly have to leave quickly. I soon gathered everything I needed for the next few days. If Connie doesn't change the locks, I can come get the rest of my things later. I picked up my camera, laptop, and associated chargers in their cases. This required several trips to the car. I took things in order of importance so that if there was a sudden interruption, I could quickly leave. I didn't take any photos. I didn't need them. I glanced at the various drawings and then went to check that the nude image of Connie I had painted in oil was still there. He wasn't there. What a surprise. It's probably hanging prominently in Tony's house now. This hardened my heart even more. It's time to leave. I went to our local bank branch and quickly opened a new account, transferring half of our savings and account funds there. This gave me a financial reserve for the first time. The next step was a visit to Walmart, where I bought a cheap prepaid phone. After activating it, I called my lawyer, Jerry Caldwell, and told him what happened. Now it was clear why this enslaving partnership contract was offered. Jerry asked if I was going to file for divorce right away and confirmed my suspicions that it would be a significant expense. I decided to disappear for a while to think about my further actions. At 33, I was still far from old, so the idea of a new marriage in the future remained a possibility if I could overcome the fear of humiliation and betrayal. Jerry suggested that I sign a power of attorney for medical and financial matters. This gave Connie no say in what might happen to me in the event of illness or injury. Moreover, I could even forbid her to visit me in the hospital. This thought calmed me a little. I absolutely did not want to see her in the near future, and maybe never at all. Back in the car, I plugged my old phone into the charger to do one last thing before disappearing. After a quick snack at a cafe, I turned on my phone and waited for the missed call and message notifications to stop. Then I sent two short messages. The first was for Tony Lapiro, my boss. I quit as of today. Send my last check along with the rest of my vacation and sick pay to Connie. Don't try to contact me. This phone will be deactivated shortly. The second message was for my wife. You can contact me through my lawyer, Jerry Caldwell. He has my power of attorney in case you need to do anything with a condominium. I transferred half of our funds to a separate account. After sending these messages, I removed the battery from the phone and threw it in the nearest trash can. Then I called my operator and disconnected the number. This should save Connie some money every month. Now, where should I go? There were still some things and clothes left in the condo, but I finally decided that they were just things. They can be replaced, and it is quite possible to live without them. I needed a new home and a job, although I hardly wear a hat. Getting a room at a decent motel would be difficult since they require a credit card. This means that Constance will be able to track me if she wants, and this will lead to something I was not ready for yet, a confrontation. I was like a wounded animal looking for a place to lick its wounds. I realized that it was not worth looking for a job as a graphic designer, at least in this city. Open your own business as a solo designer, maybe later. Now I just needed to do something and earn a living. I didn't want to waste fuel driving around aimlessly, so I went to the county park on the river 3 miles from town. There you could park under a tree in the shade and calmly think about your next actions. I still wanted to get back at Tony somehow, but I hadn't figured out how yet. Late in the afternoon, I decided to call Jennifer White's office. When she answered, I got straight to the point. "Jen, this is Cal Sanders. Just wanted you to know that I quit my job this morning. Tony did something so disgusting to me that I can no longer work there. No matter what she says, I only left because she seduced my wife and wanted to be with her. I'll miss you all and work, but like I said, I can't stay there." Jennifer quickly replied, "Cal, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize the number you're calling from. Should I keep this a secret?" "Yes, please. I got rid of my old phone and will never use this number again. I'm also leaving town as soon as I decide where to go. I don't think I'll call again." "Well, let me tell you what's going on here. After Tony received your resignation letter, she seemed to go crazy. She screamed and cursed for quite a long time and then held a meeting. She said you were taking a short leave of absence and that she would get you back to work as soon as she spoke to her lawyer. I don't know what she meant. I just know that without your ideas, nothing moves today. You are all doing a good job. You can continue without me. I had to end my call with Jennifer because Jerry was trying to dial me. Cal, it's already started. Miss Lapiro's lawyer just contacted me. He demands that you return to work immediately or the full contract penalties will be applied. To be honest, I almost laughed. I told him he needed to reread the partnership agreement. I think he almost had a stroke because I didn't agree to take you back to Zapiro like he wanted. He continued as I giggled. My grief over the breakdown of my marriage did not prevent me from seeing the comedy in it all. And Constance Reynolds Sanders called me. She wants to give you some messages. Are you ready to accept them? No, I have nothing to say to her, and I don't need her empty apologies. Still too fresh. I'll keep them in your file. When you're ready to read them, I'll send them to you or email them to you. I agreed, and he ended the conversation by saying that he would contact me if he heard from Tony or her lawyer. He was still laughing, anticipating new fireworks. I got out of the car and walked along the river bank. Where the shore sloped down to the water, I stopped and just watched. Small branches floated with the flow. The water beetles moved quickly through calm areas where the water swirled near the shore. I threw a couple of branches into the stream. Closer to the center of the river, the water moved faster than at the edge. Sitting down, I wondered why this was so. In fact, I didn't care much about it. I just tried not to think or remember. I thought Connie would be my life partner forever. We've been so close all these years. I hoped that we would become like my grandparents, so inseparable that no one thought about them separately. Harmony until the very end, making them happy and content. Now I realize that I never knew her. She could betray me without the slightest feeling of guilt. She made love to me while going on dates with Tony. If she had told me from the beginning that she wanted a relationship with a woman, I might have just supported her. But Tony's secrecy and open talk about the affair showed complete disrespect for me. I needed to do something to not let the situation completely overwhelm me. But where to go and what to do? Finally, a sensible thought came to me. Why not do something completely different to make it harder to find? I quickly found the number for Belderi and called Nancy. "Hello, Nancy. This is Cal Sanders from Zapiro. How are you doing? We exchanged pleasantries, and then I got down to business. I want to expand my horizons a little. Do you have an opening for a city guy who wants to learn more about agriculture? I think this would be useful in my professional activities, given the area where we live. She immediately agreed and asked when I could start. I replied that I could come tomorrow, and she seemed pleased. Cal, this is wonderful. All of us who work in agriculture, especially animal agriculture, constantly struggle with vegans and vegetarians who spread false information about how animals are used to produce food. You might be a great ambassador for our industry. Although I doubted that I could be their representative, I knew that in the future I could use my design work to combat misinformation. Since it was already getting dark, I decided to go to a rural community where there was a dairy farm. I was thinking of driving all night if necessary. This turned out to be too optimistic. By 3 o'clock in the morning, I had almost reached Reynardville, but I began to nod off at the wheel. Luckily, there were almost no cars on the road. I parked in a store parking lot, sat in the passenger seat, reclined the seat, and covered myself with my jacket. Soon I was already asleep. For the second night in a row, I was homeless and couldn't find a bed to rest on. At least this time I won't get wet in the rain. Early in the morning, I woke up all achy. I got out of the car, walked around the parking lot a bit, and then went to the diner for breakfast before driving to the farm. Jim was pleased with my design for their logo and now had a cow named Flossie on his shirts. But he doubted that I could become a full-fledged member of their team. I worked hard and asked thousands of questions since I had no experience in farming. Over the next few weeks, and then a couple of months, I learned how to first clean the stalls, and then learned how to use a small loader to load dry manure into the self-propelled spreader. I then spread the manure on the fields as organic fertilizer, sometimes supplementing it with other fertilizers. I helped clean the sewer system that carried urine into the lagoon. There was a crust on the surface of the lagoon, and I was warned more than once not to fall over the handrails, as the bacteria in this crust could be fatal if it got into a wound or mouth. Over time, I worked my way up, hoping to one day milk cows, and perhaps learn how to process the milk before it was sent to the plant. During this time, Jim contacted me several times. The first time he reported on the upcoming court hearing regarding the partnership agreement. Somehow, the copy of the agreement that Tony's lawyer had did not contain the last page with Mr. I's signature. Freely, and the entire revised agreement was missing except for the signature page. In our response to the case, we attached a full copy of the agreement so that the judge could study it before the hearing. This promised to be funny. The second time Jim called was about Connie. She was selling a condo and wanted my consent. I assigned Jerry to handle this since he already had my power of attorney. I didn't care what she did. I assumed she was moving in with Tony. Jerry conveyed Connie's request that I contact her. I had no idea why she had not yet started divorce proceedings, but I myself had no intention of initiating contact with her. A few days later, I received a message from Jennifer White. She was unhappy with Tony, and she wasn't the only one. According to her, Tony became an evil autocrat after I left. Work was suffering and clients were unhappy with the results. I was sorry to hear this, as the team that Tony retained was really good and capable of producing quality work. Sometimes dissatisfaction with management affects productivity. Jennifer also wrote that my surrogate was someone I knew too well. Tony brought Connie into the company as a partner and chief designer. It was even a little funny. Connie had the right education, but she didn't have the design sense or imagination needed for the job. Moreover, she had no leadership experience. A couple of days later, Jennifer wrote again and asked when I was going to open a new studio. The entire team was ready to leave without warning. She felt that Tony and Connie were almost deliberately making life miserable for the crew so that they would ask me to return. Jennifer quoted, "Tony walks around all day and says, if Cal was here, there wouldn't be any problems." She also added that Connie would just sit alone unless she was in the office with Tony, as no one wanted to talk to her. The whole team realized what the relationship was between them and was extremely unhappy about it. Jennifer didn't try to convince me to come back. Then it was time for trial regarding the partnership agreement. Jerry informed me that I had to attend. Even though the judge would likely rule in my favor, my absence could work against me. I tidied up my beard. Although my hair had already grown a lot, I simply did not have time to go to the hairdresser. However, why should I worry about my hair if I wear a cap all day? I lived in a hostel on a farm, so my suit had a slight cow scent, even though I had showered in the morning. Since the meeting started at 9 in the morning, I left the farm at 4 in order to make it in 4 hours and have a little time to spare. The suit was a little wrinkled by the time we entered the courtroom. Connie and Tony were already sitting with Tony's lawyer. Connie looked a little, how should I put it, like she might be pregnant. It's been a few months since I left, and she's developed a little roundness. I wondered who they chose as a donor. Of course, she could claim that the child is mine. It's a pity, but until she divorces me, I am not obliged to provide for her child. Tony just looked angry. I decided to enter the hall with a smile to confuse her a little. I may look like a hillbilly, but that doesn't mean I can't be happy. I glanced at both of them briefly as we sat down, but then focused on the judge. The meeting went exactly as we expected. The judge initially reprimanded Tony's lawyer for presenting such an absurd agreement in the first place. The judge then gave them both the opportunity to withdraw the suit or risk being prosecuted for perjury. Tony's lawyer agreed immediately, as if he had been shot out of a cannon. I think he filed the lawsuit solely at Tony's urging. God only knows what she hoped to get out of it. Maybe she thought it would give her a chance to talk to me and prove what a scoundrel I was. After the decision was made, Jerry and I stood up to leave. Connie ran towards us. "Wait, Cal, I need to talk to you. I'm pregnant and you're the father. When will you return home?" I didn't answer. She started to lose control and grabbed me by the lapels of my cow's smelling jacket. "Please, I am your wife and I have rights. You must talk to me. I need you by my side. Come home and let's discuss everything." I gently twisted her hands so that she would let me go. The bailiff carefully watched what was happening. "You have no right to talk to me." "None. Besides, you sold our house, so there is simply no home to return to." I looked at the bailiff. "Is this not considered an attack or an attempt to restrain? I don't want this woman to touch me ever." He hurried over and took Connie aside. All this time, Tony just stood there silently. Finally, she spoke. "I can't imagine how you could treat a woman who loves you so rudely. What kind of person are you?" "I am a person who does not share. I am a person who refuses to forgive those who sin against him if they don't even feel guilty. I am a person who has finally taken off the blinders and sees people for who they are. Bitches and women of easy virtue are those who betray others. I am a person who will never again in this life want to talk to anyone who has hurt me." I walked out of the courtroom, headed straight to my car, and returned to the only place I could now call home, a place where cows and most people don't judge. Nancy and Jim Bell have become something of a surrogate parent to me, or at least a benevolent aunt and uncle, since I started working for them. I explained to them why I was hiding, so to speak, and why I didn't want to do design in the near future. They understood me, although they completely disagreed. I think Nancy really wanted me to become an industry spokesperson. Honestly, I'd be lying if I said I'd given up on design completely. I always had a sketch pad next to my bed. The dorm rooms were small, but provided at least some privacy. Quite often I would stay up late with ideas swirling around in my head, or wake up at odd hours to do some sketches. Yes, ideas started coming. It was a campaign to support the dairy industry with Flossie. Nancy and Jim needed someone else to be the face of the campaign, someone with a big name. This person also had to be photogenic. It definitely wasn't me. One day, I accidentally mentioned that I had some ideas to support the dairy industry, and Nancy literally jumped up with excitement. "What do you have? When can I see it? You have to show us everything." I smiled at her. "Soon. I design the concept so that you can show it to anyone. For example, the Dairy Council or even the Beef Producers Association. The campaign can be tailored to any animal. You can replace Flossie with a chicken or a pig and get the same message. Right now, everything is focused on Flossie. Once everything is fully drawn out and presented in storyboard form, the advertising agency will be able to take the project and turn it into reality. They will find a famous voice and a suitable model. I won't copyright this so that you don't have any barriers to using the whole concept the way you want. She hugged me so tightly that I reminded her that I had to get back to work. She smiled and slapped me on the back. Like your boss is going to fire you. Okay, get back to work, but don't forget about the project. With that, I returned to my new way of life, where working with cows and living in a small community allowed me to rebuild myself, step by step, while I looked for where to move next. Jerry finally received the papers regarding the separation agreement. Connie requested large amounts of child support. I said no, and he sent the documents back unsigned. Then the divorce papers arrived, and now she demanded even more money, as well as going to marriage counseling together. Jim responded by mentioning her relationship with Tony and pointing out that I do not acknowledge paternity. A request was made for a DNA test. The judge suspended the entire case until the birth of the child. The potential amount of child support was reduced due to my low income. I made just over minimum wage from my job on a dairy farm. I had room and board, which was not included in my salary, so it was not reflected in the divorce papers. Anyway, I finished the storyboard and gave all my ideas to the Bell family. They served on the dairy board and presented their materials, which were unanimously approved. Funds have been allocated. Some of my drawings of Flossie were to be used as a model for CGI animation. They found a country star who grew up on a dairy farm to voice Flossie and who understood the challenges of fighting vegan propaganda. Another celebrity with a deep country accent was assigned to voice over other material. And then the real surprise came. They chose a former model, now pregnant, to appear in this and subsequent advertising campaigns. Yes, Constance Reynolds Sanders was supposed to be the face of the dairy industry. Nancy explained that they were going to take a lot of photos and video clips of her now, as a pregnant woman who consumes dairy products for the development of her fetus. After the birth of the child, videos will be created showing the benefits of dairy products in the development of the child. Nancy knew the baby could be mine, but that didn't stop their plans. If Constance's child is not suitable for the role, they will conduct a search for a suitable child star who could eventually become a child model. The Bell family was not shy about telling anyone who asked where the idea for the campaign came from, although I did not copyright the material or seek compensation. One day, my bosses at the dairy board delivered me a check for $10,000, and representatives from other meat boards came to discuss how to adapt my ideas to their needs. I soon needed an office because the small bedroom on the farm was too cramped for business and living. The Bell family helped me out again. There was an old commercial building in Maynardville that had been vacant for a long time. I don't want to say how long, but the first thing I had to do was replace some small windows and remove birds and pests before I started cleaning. The Bell family smiled and said they would no longer employ me if my new project failed. They said it was time for me to get back to what I do best. I registered the name Agri Design Solutions and worked with a banker and accountant to open the necessary accounts and obtain tax numbers for the business. The check for $10,000 was deposited into the new account. My temporary phone number was used as a company number. I also promptly set up internet access so I could quickly communicate with meat tips via email or text message. Early one morning, I put on my old work clothes to start deep cleaning my new office space. Luckily, there was also a small apartment where I planned to live in the near future. To my surprise, when I opened the door, I saw that the room was not only sparkling clean thanks to the cleaning fairies, but was also furnished with assorted office furniture. At least 10 people could now work comfortably in the old exhibition hall, while still providing space for conferences and meetings. I was completely dumbfounded and walked outside to realize that the storefront now had fresh paint on it, announcing that it was home to Agri Design Solutions. Back inside, I headed to the living area. I thought I was in for a full day of cleaning, But again, I was amazed at the transformation. Everything was clean, and the space was furnished with second-hand, but very durable furniture. Guests were also waiting for me. Nancy and Jim stood with huge smiles on their faces. They quickly introduced me to the mayor and the head of the local chamber of commerce, who organized the cleaning and furnishing of the premises. As the mayor said, "We are in a dying city. Any new business needs all the support we can give." The head of the chamber of commerce supported him and handed me the list. "These are farmers and ranchers in our area who want to discuss cooperation with you as soon as possible. They have seen the Bell family promoting themselves and want to join their ranks." He pointed to one name on the list. "This woman is a member of the Soybean Promotion Council and wants to discuss how best to advertise their products. Although vegans support soy, the average consumer has a negative opinion due to this association." I was touched and overwhelmed with feelings. "I thank you all, but I'm just one person. I don't know if I can deal with all this so quickly. I also commend you for making the place look like there are a lot of people working here, but that's not really the case at the moment." Nancy took the floor. "I don't think you'll have any problems finding help because I contacted one of your former colleagues. Remember Jennifer?" I nodded. "So, Shapiro is in serious trouble. The last salary was not paid, and the entire staff quit. Jen said that without your leadership and inspiration, everything fell apart there." She paused for me to digest the news, and then continued. "So, as soon as I told her that you were opening a new design company, she wanted to join. She and a few others will be here tomorrow. The rest of your old team will either move here, even in trailers if necessary, or will work remotely via Zoom." I had to sit down. Luckily, the chair was sturdy because I literally collapsed onto it. I couldn't find words, trying to comprehend everything I heard. Starting a new business as a sole proprietor is one thing, but having employees, some of whom move long distances, on the first day of the company's operation is something else entirely. I voiced my concerns. Nancy waved her hand as if the issue wasn't worth discussing. "I have a candidate who will help you organize everything. She'll come later if you want to talk to her." The others apparently knew about this candidacy, as they all nodded in agreement. I also gave my consent. The mayor immediately made a phone call. "I think I need to take command into my own hands." Everyone laughed, and I continued, "Do we have coffee? I think we all need to have a cup, and then move to that wonderful meeting area where we can calmly discuss all that you have achieved so far." I was used to life in a small town, but I was completely unprepared for what happened next. After the mayor's call, a huge influx of people appeared in my new office. Coffee, tea, and lemonade appeared on one of the tables, and on the other all kinds of Danish puffs and coffee cakes. People came and went all day, all with the same greeting message. Many people mentioned their names. I recognized several of them from the list of potential clients. Most said they wanted to discuss matters as soon as I was ready. Finally, the mayor, Tom Blevins, brought a specific person to me. "Cal, this is my daughter, Emily Tocklin. She is very qualified to help run your business and recently moved here from Detroit. I think she's exactly the person you need." Once again, I was speechless. "Do you remember Constance, my wife? She is a beautiful woman who has made a career in modeling." Emily outshone her. I immediately wanted my own sketchbook to capture her beauty. And when I started talking to Emily, it became obvious that she didn't even know how beautiful she was. She turned out to be the most down-to-earth and organized person I have ever met. We sat down among a crowd of visitors and began a deep conversation about how and in what direction I thought the company should develop. She immediately came up with a list of tasks that needed to be completed so that we could actually launch the business. I felt completely comfortable communicating with her. We also discussed my marital status and the reasons why my life turned out this way. Emily told me that she had recently left her husband, who came home one day and announced that he wanted to move into a bigger house to accommodate his two mistresses. He wanted her to call them sister wives and live in harmony with them. Emily disagreed and moved back to Maynardville the next day. Her divorce was recently finalized. She has two small children to take care of, but her mother has promised to help with their care so Emily can focus on her work at Agri Design Solutions. We agreed to discuss her salary later, since at that moment the whole city continued to come to us with congratulations. The next day, Jennifer and 3 other former colleagues arrived at work. We didn't have full internet access, yet the cable company guys were, as usual, dragging their feet on installing the equipment, but we could use a tablet to hold Zoom meetings. One of my main goals was to get to know new and potential clients better than through short meetings. My immersion in the dairy industry inspired me to create an advertising campaign. I suggested doing the same for each client. The designer assigned to the project was expected to work in that area until he fully understood the business. Only after this did the design development for the company begin. The idea was met with doubt by some, but when I showed my work to the Dairy Council and explained how it became the starting point for a new company, everyone agreed that it made sense. Over time, it became obvious who supported my approach and who did not. I introduced Emily as the office manager and explained that her role would evolve as the company grew. I honestly admitted that I am not a businessman, and she has experience that will help us avoid failure if we cooperate with her. Emily took charge of the meeting and explained how timesheets and expense reports would need to be kept and submitted. A list of potential clients, starting with other meat councils, was distributed, and we created teams to see if my initial ideas would work or if new, dynamic concepts would need to be developed for each client. Our new teams quickly hit the ground running. At least one member of each team went incognito in order to quickly understand the specifics of the industry. This gave us a fresh perspective on each of them, which was reflected in the proposed campaigns. The beef and pork councils each contributed $10,000 in advances to make their campaigns our priority. This gave us some headroom to cover salaries and other expenses. We also quickly began working with small local businesses and farms to create logos for them, which brought in additional funds. I knew that sooner or later my location would no longer be a secret, so it didn't surprise me when one morning the doorbell rang and my soon-to-be ex-wife walked into the office. One of her commercials had already started airing, so I assumed she now felt like a celebrity and expected special treatment. But I was surprised when she didn't act like a star, but simply asked to meet me. Emily came forward to intercept her as I was in the conference room with a new client, frantically sketching out ideas. Emily already knew that I needed to focus on work while she managed things. In the morning, we usually discussed the plan for the day, and in the evening, we summed up the results and looked for solutions. "Oh, I'm Emily, the office manager. How can I help?" she began. "I would like to see Cal," Constance replied. "Sorry, but he is busy with a client right now. Did you have an appointment?" Emily later told me that Constance smiled with a sad note at this question. "No, I was hoping that he would agree to talk if I just came in. I don't think he would ever make an appointment with me." "Sorry, but why do you think so?" "I'm his wife." "Oh, now a lot is becoming clear. Please have a seat. Do you need an extra cushion bolster to make it more comfortable?" Emily asked, seeing that Constance was in the late stages of pregnancy. Emily seemed to know from experience that sometimes pregnant women have difficulty sitting, and she brought Constance a glass of water and a piece of coffee cake. Several older women from the local church were so impressed with our new company that they brought us sweets every day. I even thought about setting up a small gym so that the employees would not turn into lazy, sweet-toothed people. Constance and Emily began a casual conversation. I was so immersed in working with the client that I didn't even know Constance was there. "I assume Cal told you about our marriage problems?" Constance began. "Cal and I swapped marriage stories the first day we met while discussing my role in the company," Emily replied. "Since then, this issue has not been raised, even when we saw your commercial for the dairy industry." She was silent for a while. "He seemed pleased with your work in this video and the way you promoted his ideas." "To be honest, I wanted to impress him," Constance admitted. "His ideas are really good and help consumers see a more realistic picture. Do you know where he gets so much inspiration from?" He seems to have a great understanding of the nitty-gritty details of the industry. As far as I understand, he went to work at the local dairy farm, Emily explained with a smile. I cleaned the stalls, put away the milking machines, and spread manure across the fields. I think this explains his knowledge. Plus, his former employers, the Bell family, are his friends and answer any questions he asks them. Constance looked surprised to hear that I did manual labor. She always knew me as an artist and graphic designer. She looked around and asked, "Is it just Cal and you that work here? I see a lot of empty tables. How is he doing?" Emily smiled again. "Are you asking for yourself or for your friend? I understand her business has closed and she is now working as a junior designer at her old company. Do you want him to succeed, or do you hope that everything will go the same way for him as she did? By the way, what's her name?" Constance seemed to blush slightly. "I'm just curious because I want him to succeed." He left, or rather, ran away, when I tried to convince him that I loved him, despite how it looked from the outside. I never wanted to hurt him. I just fell in love with someone else, just as much as I love Cal. But he refused to stop and try to understand or accept it. She paused to watch Emily's reaction. "By the way, her name is Tony. How is your relationship now? Still getting along well as newlyweds?" Constance probably flushed harder. "We have problems. Without Cal, there was tension between us. Pregnancy didn't help either. We planned to spend a few years exploring our relationship before having a child, but fate decreed otherwise, and now we will have a daughter. Is it you and Tony, or you and Cal? In an ideal world, it would be the three of us. Me, Tony, and Cal, raising a child and loving her like she deserves," Constance answered. I think at this point Emily started laughing. I heard her, turned around, and saw who she was talking to. I tried not to let the fact of her presence interfere with my work with the clients, as they did not deserve the drama that was about to unfold in a few minutes. I didn't hear what Emily said to Constance, but it was clear from their expressions that this was going to be a tense meeting. As I said, I didn't hear their conversation. Later, I had to learn about this from the words of others. Emily responded to Constance's outrageous remark that all three of them, me, her, and Emily, should become the parents of her future girl. "You know, you are almost as delusional as my ex-husband. He wanted me to be part of a harem, and his mistresses had an equal right in raising our children. I left him so quickly that his head is still spinning. I haven't known Cal for that long, but I'm sure he will never agree to your ideal lifestyle. How long have you been married to him? Do you even know him?" I think at this point their conversation ended. I heard my lovely wife say loudly from where she stood, "I think that's enough. Tell my husband I'm here and I need to talk to him." It seemed that she was about to stamp her foot, like a child who was forbidden to take candy. Her face was gloomy. I thought that such a spike in blood pressure would be harmful for her condition, but what do I know? I ignored her. I had clients to work with. If she didn't like it, she could make an appointment like everyone else. I returned to my clients. They raised some mental cows and wanted their brand to highlight this. I suggested a profile of one of their bulls with the branding and name of their ranch on the side. I made sure the profile was actually one of their bulls, so it would be authentic and not just some clip art. Once I made a good sketch on the tablet, we agreed on the concept. We stood up. I shook their hands and promised to provide a color example on the computer in a few days so they could make a final decision. After they left, I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. It's time for the final showdown. Fortunately, Tony did not accompany Constance to Reynardville. I walked over to the chair where Constance was. I didn't greet her because I absolutely didn't want to see her. "Constance, why are you here?" I said that all communication should take place through our lawyers. The divorce is suspended until you give birth, and then paternity will be determined. If it turns out that this is my child, I will pay child support. It's a girl, Cal. She's going to be a beautiful baby. Don't you want to hold your daughter in your arms? Not as long as you or Tony are involved in raising her. I don't think you're a suitable role model, and after you and Tony set me up, I don't think she should be around the child. The Lord only knows what ethical and moral principles you will teach her. I see only destruction in front of her. That's why you need to come home, Cal. You could teach her and show her the real principles in practice. You could be the person to set her on the right path. Yes, I would be her nanny and tutor while you and Tony demonstrated your immoral principles every day. No, thank you. Are you just going to leave your daughter? According to you. I promise you, I haven't had another man since we became exclusive. Yes, I know what your promises are. You promised to one day give up everyone else, and now you can't live without your new love. We'll just wait and see if you've had anyone other than me. Who knows, maybe you and Tony have had sex with any man you meet. You know that's not true. I would never cheat on you. I laughed. What do you call sex with my boss then? If it's not cheating, then what is it? But I love her, and she loves me. Is it cheating if you have sex with someone you love? I shook my head. She was completely delusional. You can't argue with a person who is so far from reality, it can drive you crazy. I don't think we have anything else to talk about. You need to leave. If you don't leave, I will ask that you be removed for trespassing. I don't want to see you anymore. Send your comments through my lawyer. He will pass them on to me, but I don't promise to answer. But your daughter is going to be born soon. We need you to be home. Both Tony and I and your daughter want you there. I want you in the delivery room with me when she's born. Will Tony be there too? Of course. She'll be Jenny's second parent, and she's also my birth partner. She should be there. If there's anyone I want to see less than you, it's my old boss. No, I won't be there. Get a DNA test done ASAP, and I won't hesitate to provide my sample. If she turns out to be my child, I will pay the alimony established by the court. I warn you that I do not earn much, since the business is still new and is just starting to make a profit. I didn't even have the right to participate in choosing the child's name. It has already been decided by two cheaters. I did not voice this objection, since she would probably say that among the huge number of messages I had not read, there was something about the child's name. I didn't want to give her a reason to blame me for this. I walked her to the door. I really wanted to grab her hand and push her outside, but it would look bad for everyone who might see it. I opened the door, and she obediently came out. Constance, I meant it when I said you could be removed for trespassing. There is no need for you to contact me in any way other than for possible child support. Do not come back here or try to contact me directly. This includes your lover. Have a safe trip home, although I don't care about you. Your unborn child should be safe. I closed the door before she could answer and locked it. I hoped that the sound of the latch would convey to her the idea that I was not joking. A few minutes later, I opened the lock again as we had meetings scheduled. A week later, Jerry called me and told me that I was the proud father of a 7-pound, 8-ounce baby girl with blonde hair, 10 fingers and toes, and blue eyes. I wondered again who her real might be, since Constance and I have dark hair and brown eyes. I've already sent my DNA to the lab and asked them to send the results to Jerry. That way, there would be no way for Constance to falsify the results to match little Jenny's DNA. Once Constance gets a DNA test done on the baby, any competent doctor will be able to compare the results and determine if she really is my daughter. I wish I could say that a romantic relationship was starting to develop between Emily and me, but it was too early to tell. We got along great. Sometimes she had to bring her children to work if her mother had difficulties. We installed a bench with storage space in the conference room to store toys for the kids. If there was a meeting with clients, Emily would take the children into the apartment, where they would play in the living room while she answered calls on the cordless phone. Some employees worked remotely and continued to live in my old town, allowing us to serve clients in both the two communities and surrounding areas. Incomes were growing. Diving into various business interests also paid off. We could highlight lesser-known aspects of target industries to help educate the public while promoting the concept. Weeks passed. Jerry finally got the divorce case put on the court docket. The DNA test results clearly confirmed that I am Jenny's biological father. I was willing to pay court-ordered child support and sent Constance a check every month after Jerry confirmed paternity. The day of the hearing arrived. Constance requested family therapy. Jerry was the first to call her to the witness stand and make her talk in detail about her affair and how she and Tony hid it from me. He then summoned Tony and forced her to admit that she had been giving me updates about her affair while hiding the fact that her partner was Constance. Jerry then forced them both to admit that they were trying to effectively make me a slave with their absurd partnership agreement, and that they only finally admitted to their affair when they thought I had signed the agreement. Jerry sat down after taking them apart on the stand and whispered to me, "Do you want primary custody of the child?" I didn't know what to answer. It never occurred to me that I might have an advantage over the child's mother. "Why do you ask?" I answered, trying to quickly make a decision. "Look at the judge," Jerry said. "This man is furious. If he could charge them criminally for what they did to you, he would. Now is the perfect time to ask for it. Joint custody is the least you can get." The judge did look displeased as he listened to opposing counsel try to minimize the damage done by the two women's testimony. I nodded to Jerry. "This kid deserves something better than these two. Go for it." When it was his turn, Jerry stood up and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, given the admissions of my client's wife and her mistress about how they tried to manipulate him into agreeing to their unusual proposal for a form of marriage, and also given that this pregnancy was unplanned and both women confirmed that she has caused discord between them, my client is amending his divorce petition, seeking full custody of his daughter, Jenny Sanders. He is willing to grant liberal visitation rights to the child's mother, Constance Sanders, but is asking for the other. The participant in this disastrous marriage, Miss Tony Lapiro, was prohibited from having any contact with the child." This statement exploded like a grenade. All three, the lawyer, Constance, and Tony, jumped up at the same time and began to explain themselves, becoming indignant and shouting. There was a real uproar for a few moments until the judge began banging his gavel, demanding silence. They fell silent but remained standing. The baby was in a carrier and slept peacefully, despite the noise. After a brief whisper with her lawyer, Constance spoke. "Your Honor, I would like to be heard." Her lawyer desperately tried to silence her, but the judge ignored him and allowed Constance to speak. "Please listen to you, Mrs. Sanders. I warn you that your behavior is already testing my patience, and you are now walking on very thin ice." She nodded. "Sorry for the confusion, Your Honor, but I do not support the idea of allowing the child's father only supervised visits. If it were up to me, he could go home today and become the good parent I know he can be. I'm not ashamed of my lifestyle choices, but I do apologize for how Tony and I started our relationship and how we failed to get Cal to accept it. He's in a lot more pain than we expected." The judge looked at her lawyer, who was trying to argue against his own client, and slammed his gavel in irritation, expressing his displeasure. "So, Mrs. Sanders, why did you file for divorce? In your petition, you stated that your husband abandoned you and was indifferent to you. Has your husband threatened you? Has he made you feel unsafe at home? Has he physically harmed you? Or did anything that would discredit you in the eyes of your family or friends?" "Your Honor, I filed for divorce on the recommendation of my lawyer and Miss Lapiro. We were unable to get Cal to respond to our efforts to reach out to resolve the issues he was having. We hoped that this would force him to go to couples therapy so he realized that I love him and value him, just like Tony. The pregnancy was unwanted and unexpected, but if it helps him recover, then it will be an additional plus in my desire to save our marriage, even if I will still have a relationship with Tony. As far as making any threats against me or Tony, he never did anything other than threaten to kick us out of his new office for trespassing. Your lawyer mentions that pregnancy has caused a disagreement between you and your mistress. Is this true? Because the pregnancy was unplanned, it took us a while to come to terms with it. We didn't plan on having a baby for another couple of years. But like other parents who had to quickly adapt to pregnancy news, We accepted my daughter and are working to be the parents she deserves. Are you talking about you and Mr. Sanders or you and Miss Lapiro? For now, I'm talking about myself and Miss Lapiro. I hope that Cal will accept the visitation rights offered to him to be a part of our daughter's upbringing if he is unable to accept our relationship and return home. I whispered to my lawyer, ask her where she lives now and why she sold our apartment, although I continued to help with the payments. It seemed as if the judge had read my thoughts or grasped the essence of our conversation. Mrs. Sanders, where do you live now? I live with Tony in her apartment. Did you and your husband have separate housing while you lived together? Yes, sir. We had a condominium. What happened to this property? I sold it after Cal left. Why? You couldn't afford it after he left? Was it too much of a financial burden for you? She blushed. It became a little more difficult as Cal's income dropped significantly, but he continued to send money into our joint account every month. I decided to sell it so that Tony and I could set up our place together since we love each other so much. Did you make a profit from the sale of this property? Yes, sir. Cal and I lived there for 7 years, so the property had accumulated some value. Did you share these profits with your husband? Her face turned even redder from embarrassment. No, Tony's business was failing, so I became her partner. We used all the money we could get to try to save her company from bankruptcy. It didn't work, and the business went bankrupt anyway. Now Tony works for another company. The judge looked at the papers in front of him. I don't see a partnership agreement in the documents provided. Did you have a formalized contract? No, sir. Tony and I made a verbal agreement. She promised that I would return the money I invested as soon as the company became profitable. Did your husband know how the money from the sale of the property was used? She shook her head. Have you tried to communicate to your husband how you intend to use the money from the sale of your joint property? She shook her head again. So, in other words, you entered into a forbidden relationship with your husband's boss, who provoked him by hiding your name. You then worked out this absurd partnership agreement with her to force him to accept your terms of marriage. After he left, you sold joint real estate to invest money in this woman's business without any contract, hiding it from her husband, and without giving him the opportunity to influence the use of this money. So you and his former boss are trying to force him to comply with a contract you thought he signed, while committing fraud in court. And now you want him to just say, "It's okay," and go home, excuse me, to your lover's house to become what? Free nanny? And all this against the backdrop of your open romance with Miss Lapiro. Your Honor, Calvin will not be a free babysitter. I will accept him with open arms as a full partner in our relationship. I want him to be with me where he belongs. I think I've heard enough. I will take into account all the circumstances and inform you of my decision in a week in the same courtroom and at the same time when we began these hearings. He struck the gavel and left the hall while we all stood in silence. I shook Jerry's hand and hurried out of the courtroom. I tried to get away before Constance or Tony could intercept me. Constance was trying to take the baby and shouted to me, asking if I wanted to see my daughter. I clutched my heart and kept going, even though it felt like I was wading through molasses to get out. Jerry prevented Tony from catching up with me by simply blocking the passage. What she shouted made me realize that she was never a friend, but only someone who used me, abused my kindness, and tried to control me for her own purposes. The next week, I checked into a motel. Agri Design Solutions had already found success in the niche that Tony had developed with Zapiro, and now needed an office in my old hometown. Every day I met with representatives of the Chamber of Commerce and various realtors in search of a suitable location for our office. Of course, I was offered the old Zapiro headquarters, since it was created for this type of business. The owner's representative was a little taken aback when I refused to even walk through the door and told him to find me something else. There were several reasons why I didn't want to rent this space. First of all, one might think that Zapiro has reopened under a new name. Sorry, but we were a new and unique bunch, and didn't need old memories dragging us down. Yes, and I had two bad memories of this office to use it. Finally, I settled on an old retail space similar to the one I had in Maynardville. It had parking, not much but enough, and was in an area that ensured our name would be visible to passing traffic. I invited all my local employees to check out the place. We soon had a design plan in place, including wall murals and custom curtains for the large windows to highlight some of our work. It's amazing what you can get these days. I also ordered the same curtains for my office in Maynardville. When it was time for the final meeting, I had a new suit and tie. I still wore a goatee, but my hair was neatly trimmed, as befits a businessman. I was used to wearing a hat, so I walked into the courtroom holding a fedora. Jerry and I talked quietly while we waited for the judge. Constance was alone with her lawyer. I assumed that Tony was either looking after the child or hiding it in an unknown location in case the judge ruled in my favor. Constance looked sad and lonely. I didn't know that, under an emergency order from the judge, Child Protective Services had conducted a search of Constance and Tony's home. To Constance, it looked like she was going to lose her daughter. She didn't know that Child Protective Services also visited the office Agri Design Solutions in Maynardville and ran into Emily and local residents. When they were informed that I was being tested as a possible guardian for Jenny, the entire female population of Maynardville came forward and declared that they were ready to become nannies if necessary. I didn't tell anyone about the possibility of becoming a guardian because I still couldn't wrap my head around the possibility. But Emily took it calmly and soon completely furnished the second bedroom of her apartment with furniture and accessories for the child. I was reprimanded by her for not informing her of the events at the hearing. Her indignation made me smile. When she told me how the women of the town had come to the rescue, I vowed never to leave Maynardville, even if our branch made more money than the local office. It was both touching and humbling to experience such quick support from the community. So let's get back to the meeting. The judge brought everyone in order and began to announce his decision. His voice was stern. As you now know, I have requested an immediate investigation by the Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Child Welfare, to determine which parent can provide the best environment for the upbringing and development of this child. Ideally, it would be both of you in a traditional family setting, but that's clearly not possible. He paused, cleared his throat, and continued. The preliminary report does not clearly conclude that the father, Calvin Sanders, or the mother, Constance Reynolds Sanders, would provide the best living conditions for the child. Now that HHS is involved, they will conduct further reviews and visits to ensure that any decision made today will be in the best interests of the child. Constance looked relieved. She was probably afraid that her relationship might sway the investigators to my side. I also felt relieved. Taking on the role of father to a baby who was only a few months old was very daunting. We both held our breath, waiting for the judge's final decision. I have reservations about keeping the child in the current situation due to the fraud, outright lies, and attempts at manipulation to force Mr. Sanders into a position where he would be practically a slave to two women who definitely did not have his best interests at heart. The lies told and admitted in this courtroom disgust me. If I could find a violation of the law in this farce of marriage and divorce, I would now have the district attorney bring charges against you, Mrs. Reynolds Sanders and Miss Tony Lapiro. I think you are a disgusting person, and I doubt that you will put your daughter's interests first in your life. I am also concerned about Miss Lapiro's influence on the child, since she shows no remorse for the way she seduced you and ruined Mr. Sanders' family happiness. The judge looked closely at Constance. I also have doubts about granting custody to a man who, since the birth of his daughter, has shown no interest in her other than paying the recommended alimony. You indicated at the last hearing that Mr. Sanders made no attempt to see the child or even hold her. This lack of affection is alarming despite the glowing testimonials and recommendations from Maynardville residents. The judge turned to me. Is there an opportunity to return here and manage your business at the same time? I understand that you are opening an office in this city. Constance turned around sharply at these words. No, Your Honor, I have no reason to come back here. As you may know, this is not my hometown. I grew up 1,000 miles away and came here just to study. I stayed because of the local business opportunities and then to create a graphic design office with Miss Lapiro. I have never felt more at home than in Maynardville. The entire community has not only accepted me, but has been extremely supportive, both in my new business and in this endeavor. I cannot in good conscience leave this city. The judge nodded. At this stage, I am annulling the marriage of Calvin Sanders and Constance Reynolds Sanders. I am also directing further investigation by the Department of Health and Human Services regarding the welfare of Jenny Sanders Lapiro's child. For the foreseeable future, standard visitation rights for Father Calvin Sanders will be limited to 1 day a week and every other weekend. Once the child reaches 6 months, custody will be divided as follows. 1 week every 3, the child will be with Mr. Sanders. After the first year, I will reconsider the visitation and custody arrangements and am leaning towards a joint custody arrangement where the child will be with Mr. Sanders for 2 weeks and then with Mrs. Reynolds Sanders for 2 weeks. I also order that the child's last name be changed from Sanders Lapiro to Sanders. I was stunned. I didn't know that Constance had legally registered Jenny's last name as Sanders Lapiro. Another insult thrown at me. I felt rage begin to rise within me. Even though I was in the courtroom, I was ready to take out all my anger on my unfaithful ex-wife. She seemed to sense this as she moved closer to her lawyer, as if seeking protection. I barely heard the rest of the judge's speech. I also decree that Tony Lapiro is not to be left alone with the child under any circumstances. She will not act as a guardian for this child. If the HHS investigation determines that her influence in any way compromises the welfare of a child, I will order the immediate removal of the child from your home and the full care of Mr. Sanders. He looked at Constance. Do you understand? Constance looked confused. Sir, we live together. Why can't Tony have contact with our daughter? My decision is based not only on the story of how she seduced you and destroyed your marriage, but also on the investigation conducted at my request. It turns out that your husband was the driving force behind Miss Lapiro's business, which went bankrupt after he left. Clearly, Miss Lapiro is not the entrepreneur she thinks she is. Trying to force your husband into a partnership agreement that would effectively make him a weak-willed executor of her whims also played a role in my decision. He continued, It bothers me that you gave so much money to save her business without any contract or payback plan. In addition, you made no attempt to share the money from the sale of your apartment with your husband or get his opinion on investing it. This makes me doubt that the interests of your child are your priority. He paused and looked at her intently. I also found out that you, Constance, are actively using your daughter for advertising purposes and becoming a popular face of the dairy industry. Constance nodded. My investigator discovered that Miss Lapiro and your lawyer planned to trademark your daughter's name and likeness and become her agent in order to benefit from her fame, both now and in the future. His look spoke volumes. Jerry Caldwell almost jumped with the desire to stand up and speak in my defense. I was completely stunned by this turn of events. My rage began to flow from Constance to Tony. How could a man who was once such a good friend be involved in something so vile? The judge turned to Constance again. Did you know about this? Constance looked as confused as I did. She looked at her lawyer. He looked away. She shook her head. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I believe that Jenny was represented by my agent. I signed the contracts, not Tony. I have no idea what she was planning or why she was doing it. The judge nodded. As for your living conditions, I cannot dictate where or with whom you live, but I can rule that Miss Lapiro has no unauthorized contact with your daughter. He turned to me. Mr. Sanders, I also cannot demand that you use this opportunity to get to know your daughter and build a relationship with her. But I will make a recommendation to HHS that if it becomes necessary to remove the child from your ex-wife's home, I will offer to place Jenny Sanders in foster care unless you establish a family connection with her. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, I understand, and I will begin visits as soon as possible. The judge nodded and struck his gavel, ending the hearing. Jerry turned to me with a smile. You're now officially single after at least 60 days and free as a bird. Congratulations. I nodded and tried to smile back. Only lawyers profit from such situations. Still felt pain and anger. Most of all, I wanted to crush Tony with my own hands. This from a man who had never physically defended himself, served in the military, and didn't even know any tough guys who could do it for me. But I still dreamed of squeezing my hands around her neck until life left her. Jerry was standing in the aisle when the judge called Constance's lawyer over for a short conversation. However, we could hear them talking. Young man, I want you to know that I am sending everything related to this case to the bar. Wait for notice and prepare to surrender your license. The lawyer looked ashamed and just nodded. When he turned around, Constance was right in front of him. How can you call yourself my representative? How could you do this to me? Are you trying to steal my daughter? Without waiting for his answer, she slapped him and turned to me. Cal, wait, please. I beg you to listen to me. I stopped. I was going to have to deal with her for as long as we shared custody of our daughter, so I decided to start getting used to this fact. But I didn't have to talk to her. She could just talk to herself. Jerry stayed next to me and nodded. Please forgive me. I didn't know what Tony was doing or what she was trying to do. I don't understand anything. I will comply with all the judge's demands, even if I have to move again. I won't interfere with your meetings with Jenny. Moreover, I want you to come to our apartment and meet her now, today, if you want. I can't bear the thought of losing her, and it hurts me to think that her father is not a part of her life. Please come and meet her. She gently touched my sleeve, as if she wanted to grab me and drag me along with her. I remained standing like a statue, without even withdrawing my hand. Her face darkened even more, and she sighed and removed her hand. I was hoping that once I met Jenny, you would forgive me and maybe allow me to come back to you. I still love you. With an indifferent expression on my face, I shrugged. She understood my answer and retreated. Jerry chimed in. Miss Reynolds, how about we arrange a meeting at a neutral location so Calvin can see Jenny? I will speak for Calvin. Miss Lapiro is not welcome at such a meeting and should not attempt to make contact. Constance nodded and, brushing away a few tears, realized how she had been addressed. In one of the points of my claim, I insisted on returning her maiden name. Now neither she nor Tony could use the surname Sanders, even if they got married. They agreed to meet at a local park in the afternoon, so I could see my daughter. I would like to say that everything ended well, but as in real life, everything turned out to be much more complicated. Jenny was distrustful of me at first. She cried every time I tried to pick her up until she was 3 months old. Then she gradually got used to me. The visits went according to schedule. After 6 months, Constance weaned her off breast milk so that there would be no feeding problems when Jenny stayed with me. I had to abandon my plan to use a small apartment for business. The child welfare people barely cleared her for occasional visits. When the 3-week period of living together began, I needed better housing. The townspeople of Maynardville once again came to the rescue and helped us find a wonderful home for Jenny and me. Constance had moved out of Tony's house, but apparently they met whenever Jenny was at my place or on those rare evenings when Constance could find a babysitter. She strictly ensured that Tony had absolutely no contact with Jenny. Jenny remained a baby in commercials for the dairy industry, and Constance and I made sure that the money paid for her appearance was invested in her future education and adult life. I also continued to pay child support to Jenny when she was with Constance and put the same amount into her account when she was with me. What happened between me and Emily? It could have been incredible, but no, it didn't happen. Emily decided that a relationship with her boss was not the best option and directed her attention in a different direction. But I met my next love in a completely unexpected way. When I could only pick up Jenny every other weekend, I would make 4-hour trips back to the town where Constance and I lived. I rented a small apartment so I would have an address for surprise visits from Child Protective Services. I realized that frequent travel could take a toll on Jenny, so I tried to leave early to visit my office and staff. The business was growing, and I needed to find a manager for this branch. This is how Karen came into my life. Her height barely exceeded 150 centimeters, and her weight did not exceed 45 kilograms. She was not as striking a beauty as Constance or Emily, but she had a sweet, neighborhood beauty. She applied for the office manager position and did well in the interview. However, I doubted whether she could manage my design team and keep them productive. I decided to give her a chance, and she quickly took matters into her own hands, establishing work with Emily so that the team began to work even better than before. Karen was my age and had also gone through a divorce. Her husband got his secretary pregnant and left Karen with their two small children. When I first met these guys, they immediately started calling me Uncle Kel. We beat around the bush for a long time. I didn't want to be accused of harassment, so I tried to keep our meetings strictly professional. Everything changed one Thursday when I arrived at the office. I usually arrive on Friday to take care of local issues and then work on my own projects. But this week, I arrived a day early to discuss the company registration process with Jerry Caldwell and was about to take my desk when Karen approached me. She tried to sit on the edge of my table, but due to her height, she could not. Jumping a little, she finally settled down on the corner and, without wasting time, said, "Look, I know you won't make the first move because of all these corporate rules, so I'll make it. I think you're interested in me, and I'm definitely interested in you. If necessary, I will submit my resignation to make it more comfortable for you to start dating me. Hopefully it won't come to that, but here's my suggestion. How about dinner at my house tonight? I'm not a fool." A nice woman who knew what she wanted and was not afraid to voice it asked me out on a date. I immediately agreed. From that moment, our relationship began to develop. Soon, Emily and Karen themselves suggested switching places. Karen wanted to be with me all the time, and Emily, ready for new acquaintances, was eager to move to a larger city. It's funny, but she ended up choosing one of my designers. Karen moved to Reynardville and immediately moved into my home. A few months later, we got married. Her kids started calling me just Cal instead of Uncle Cal. I was not trying to replace their father, who, by the way, was not a bad person. He just made a mistake by starting an affair. When Jenny was 2 years old, Tony again tried to interfere with her future. I don't know what her plan was, but the court quickly gave me custody of my daughter, giving Constance the right to extensive visitation. Constance finally broke off her relationship with Tony when she announced that she was pregnant. It turned out that Tony was not so true to her principles. Constance admitted to me that it was not Tony's peculiarities that destroyed their relationship, but her infidelities. I couldn't resist and answered, "Well, I understand you perfectly." Her face changed when she realized the irony of my phrase. Constance moved closer to us so she could see Jenny more often. She still does commercials, using her daughter in commercials for the dairy industry. My business continued to grow. We started taking on larger projects in neighboring big cities. Looks like I'll have to open another branch soon. It's a pity that Tony took a wrong turn. All this could have been her success. Oh yeah, what happened to Tony? Well, she stopped exercising during her pregnancy and gained about 50 pounds that she never lost. Her boyfriend turned out to be a married work colleague. When he refused to acknowledge the child, Tony caused such a scandal that they were both fired. She found herself on welfare and Medicaid while she looked for a new job. Her son was born premature due to Tony's preeclampsia and was later diagnosed with autism. He is now receiving specialized care to maximize his natural abilities, but he has a long and difficult road ahead. It is now very difficult for Tony to find a partner, both among men and among women. As for me, yes, I'm happy. My life is going on as usual, and I am happy. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.